afternoon for us. My name is Mark Thomas, and I'm the market manager for Alpha Media here in Saginaw for the Bay region. Want to thank you for joining us this afternoon for this political seminar. Want to tell you a little bit about my background. I've worked in the radio business for over 40 years now, and am a graduate of Central Michigan University with, ironically, a political science degree, and graduated high school from Whittemore Prescott. So for me, this was an opportunity to come back home, and thrilled to be here right now. We've got some good information for you today, and we'll jump into the presentation, and as Carrie mentioned, have time for questions at the end. The name of the presentation is Beyond the Yard Signs. Obviously, running for local office means getting name recognition, and yard signs can do that. But boy, in today's world, having the voter know a little bit more about you than that can be very advantageous. The first thing we want to talk about is with COVID-19 and the changes in law with absentee ballots. Also want to discuss the purple voter, traditional media, digital media, as well as social media. We have an opportunity for some interviews that will appear on WSGW, and as mentioned at the end, we'll do some questions and answers. First thing we want to talk about is, boy, just some things that have happened to the landscape over the last few months. Absentee ballots will have a huge impact on Michigan elections this year. The obvious reason is concerns of COVID-19 and the pandemic and people not wanting to kind of congregate together. But the other thing is that the laws changed in the fall, and absentee ballots now are available for everyone to be able to use. And our Attorney General actually sent out applications to all the citizens of the state of Michigan, so they have the opportunity to apply for absentee ballots. So this will have what we believe a pretty big impact on the election from the standpoint of people voting much earlier than what we would anticipate. So as opposed to trying to target your advertising and marketing to maybe all conclude right before the election, remember the result of all this is that earlier and longer is going to be the voting season, and the lesson is to promote yourself early to make sure those voters voting early know who you are before they send their ballots in. Next, please. I mentioned a little bit ago about the purple voter, and really what that's referring to is the person that didn't get out and vote. And we all know that there's a lot of them, but to give you an idea, in the last presidential election here in the Tri-City area, we had 97,000 folks that voted for Trump, 81,000 vote for Clinton, but there was 106,000 that did not vote. So as you're looking at being able to draw support, keep in mind, if you can help motivate those people that didn't vote in the last elections, you could, the purple voter actually would have been the winning candidate had that have been possible. Next, please. Talking about traditional media, we'll start with television, which tends to carry the lion's share of political advertising. One of the things to keep in mind, being in the Bay region here, is we live in a combined television market that serves both the Flint and the Bay region. Another thing to consider is there's a lot of folks that receive their television via cable or via the dish, and this tends to further fragment the audience because they obviously have a lot more viewing choices than somebody who just listening over the air. And then the other factor that I think we're all aware of is more and more people are cutting the cord. So then as a result, they tend to have less direct access for local stations. They tend to use some of the different computer programs to be able to access TV. And that brings us to OTT, or over-the-top television. That's the means to be able to reach those folks. It really becomes more similar to buying digital than it does television, but it is a product that we offer. And so, boy, if you're trying to reach those millennials and any younger voters at all, that's something that you'll want to consider. Another consideration is that so many of the national and state campaigns, and I guess really the national campaigns come to mind, you're already seeing the political advertising on broadcast television. And so if you recall in other elections, you get close to the election, you can get to the point where all the commercials you're watching are political, and it just becomes more and more difficult as a local candidate to stand out in that environment. Next, please. Newspaper obviously continues to have a declining circulation. Even according to their records, they only reach 8% of the population today. And the most common complaint we hear today is that there's less and less local content in our local newspapers. The other real big drawback is there is very little chance of reaching any younger voters using newspaper. Next, please. Billboards are another option. It's real important with billboards to keep your message brief, particularly if it's along a highway. It's hard to read going 75 or 80 miles an hour. They can be expensive depending on the location, but they're very, very good for a targeted geography. If you happen to live in a district where you have a billboard at the beginning and a billboard at the end, and everybody kind of drives in between, this could be an effective way to get your name out. Would very much consider just using your name and office and not trying to convey too much of a detailed message, because again, it'll just be difficult to get that across to folks. And of course, radio. You know, some facts about radio. Radio continues to reach over 90% of the total 12 plus population on a weekly basis. And today is the #1 reach medium of all medias out there. That occurred about 3 years ago when radio surpassed network television as the top reach vehicle. Radio allows you to target by format, which means also target by audience. So depending on what type of musical choices or on-air content, as we have with WSGW, with news and information, you can target the type of voter that you're looking to reach based on you know, some stereotypes and their listening habits. Radio also allows you to effectively communicate a detailed message. If you decide to run 60-second commercials, 60 seconds gives you a good amount of time to let people know what you're thinking and why they should vote for you. Next, please. This is just a graph to give you a comparison between the different mediums, including new media here. Television, you can see on the far right is the 12 plus figure, reaches 87% of the total population, radio at 93%. Other TV connected devices, computers, smartphones, you can see down the line. Even with smartphones, I guess it's kind of surprising I would assume anyway, that everybody had a smartphone, but only 82% of the population does. So this gives you an idea from a total reach standpoint, how much of the population are you going to be able to impact using one media over another. Next, please. This is just kind of a fun graph to give you an idea of the resiliency of radio. Back in 1969, when the first man on the moon occurred, the reach of radio was 92.7% of the population. Ironically, here in 2019, 92.7% of the population in the Great Lakes Bay region listens to radio. We have seen a decline in the length of time people listen based on all the competitiveness of different devices to be able to utilize in today's world. However, that reach figure remains very impressive. It's why they call it broadcast, because we have that ability to reach a large portion of the population all at one time. Next, please. Obviously, technology has had a huge impact on the world, and one of the ways that it's been able to help us is to be able to use a product, it's called Analytical, which we have hooked into our commercial trafficking system, and it ties into our advertisers' websites to be able to detect how much of an increase do people see when their radio commercial airs within the first 8 minutes of that. And what we've been able to see on a very consistent and sometimes pretty dramatic basis is that there's huge increases up to 20-25% that will occur to a business's website once the radio commercial runs in that first 8 minutes. So radio, I guess the point is, radio has the ability to prompt somebody to look for more information, to go to your website, to be able to seek things out, which obviously with all the information you're trying to get out to the voters, this can be I guess, added benefit to why you'll want to consider using radio. Next, please. Boy, with the digital media portion, I'm going to hand off to Daryl Jacobs, who is one of our top account executives at the radio station and as well as very much a digital expert. And Daryl's going to walk through a number of the digital products that we have available as well.
Has changed. Oh, it says I'm muted.
You're unmuted now.
All right. As the slide says, the world has changed, and I'm looking at all the different ways that people are sending us information. You know, you got the tablets, we all have smartphones, laptops, televisions, and we're all connected. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this morning. My wife and I, there's only two of us, and we have two smartphones, we have a tablet, we have a laptop, we have our desktop, and we have two connected TVs. So for the two of us, we have 7 connections to the internet. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use digital media to reach voters online. And so let's go to the next slide. All right, so what does your campaign need? Well, you need a couple of things. The first thing is you need a really good website. You need to make sure that people can find you, that the information on your website is relevant, that it's up to date, and has all the details about your campaign. You also want to make sure that you have a Facebook page. You want to make sure that you're relating to the voters. The one thing is that if you're going to have a Facebook page, you want to make sure that you're actually posting on it. You want to make sure that the Facebook fans and people that see it see that you're really spending time there. And then I'm going to talk just a little bit about the different types of options we have with digital advertising. And so what digital advertising does, it allows us to reach voters at the right time and at the right place with targeted advertising. And I'm speaking specifically of those ads that follow you around the internet. You've spent some time on the internet lately, and we've bought a bunch of things, and you know, you might be looking for shoes or looking for camera equipment, and then all of a sudden for the next 3 weeks, everywhere you go on the internet, you're seeing ads for shoes or for camera equipment. And that's what I'm specifically talking about. We can develop ads for you, and we can deliver them on mobile devices, on your computers and your tablets. We can deliver them on video using YouTube. Mark talked about over-the-top television. So a lot of people are cutting cords, and we can actually send your ads through the apps on Roku, those type of things. What we're able to do is for the election for you, we can use these ads to build your campaign awareness. We can help with your fundraising efforts. We can use ads to get out the vote. We can convert fence sitters. And the one that most people find very interesting is we can track polling location conversions. So we can send out to your ads, we can see how many people opened them up, clicked on them, and then actually went and voted. So that's information that we can do. So on the next slide, I'm going to tell you about how we actually do these things. So one of the things that we can do is we can really target who you're trying to reach. So if you're trying to reach 25 to 45-year-old females that live in Midland, Michigan, we can do that. If you're trying to target 25 to 45-year-old women who live not only in Midland, but just in the 48642 zip code, we can do that. Maybe you just want to reach that demographic that live on Coolidge Drive, or maybe that just vote in Ward number 4. We can target the demographic that you're looking for in just a certain geography area. One of the other things that we can do is we can do addressable geofencing. And what that is addressable geofencing allows us to, if you're trying to reach, like I said, specifically women between 25 and 45 that live in Midland, we can use information to determine where they live, and we can use the ads and specifically target them at their houses. Consider it like digital direct mail. You're going to direct your ads just to that specific target market. Another thing that geofencing does, it allows us to put a fence around a location and deliver your ads to people that go in and out of that building. So say you're trying to reach Walmart customers in Midland, Michigan, we can put a fence around Walmart, and then as people start to go into Walmart with their mobile devices, we'll start sending them your ads. We also use a tactic called search retargeting. And this is the one that most people understand the easiest, is because if you type in to your Google search bar, sheriff in Midland, Michigan, then that's a person that if you're running for sheriff, you want to send that person your ad because they're looking up specific keywords and phrases. Contextual targeting is a different tactic, similar to search retargeting, but contextual targeting is if someone happens to be reading a story and it talks about past sheriffs in Midland, they didn't type in anything keywords specifically, but if your keywords show up in the article, then that's a person that we want to send your ad to. And finally, we use site retargeting. These are people that have come to your website, and then once they come, we want to keep sending them your ad so that in the future, it's a reminder for them to come back and spend some more time at your website. That's why it's important to keep it up to date and relevant so they can keep finding out more information so that they can use that when they're deciding who to vote for. Next slide. Okay.
Thank you, Daryl. Boy, appreciate the details there. And if you have questions, we'll be able to field those at the end. We're going to move on to social media. And I guess the first clue of social media is be mindful of what is on your personal pages. I don't think I have to go in a lot of detail there. You just want to be conscious of that. But as Daryl mentioned, you also want to be active. If you want to provide, I guess, a good idea to the voters of who you are and what your lifestyle is about and all that. And as mentioned, this helps to provide the voter with an idea of what interests you have. And I guess another characteristic you'll find is Facebook tends to reach an older demographic, but keep in mind that's the person that is most likely to be a voter. There's not a lot of younger people getting out and voting, and so Facebook tends to be the best social media vehicle when it comes to elections and all that sort of thing. One neat thing that we've been able to come across is a new product called Live Social Stream. And for a lot of businesses, a lot of political candidates, a lot of parties even, they have a large list of Facebook friends. But again, boy, it can be difficult to send them a message to be able to stand out. And what Live Social Stream does is it gives you the opportunity to almost put on a television type of program where we would have one of our local personalities that would be able to interview you, and then we'd promote that to all of your Facebook friends, all of related Facebook friends that you may have through the party, but also then through the radio station's Facebook friends. And by doing that, you're broadening out the reach that you have of that, But if you're only using your own Facebook friends, you tend to be reaching the same people over and over again. So we have the opportunity with this product to really broaden that up and have up to 5 different sources to be able to call into. There's zero setup. We take care of all the graphics and the pre-promotion of this. And as mentioned, we promote it as well on all 5 of our radio stations so that we can increase the number of people that are viewing. And it's not only the people that are viewing at that particular moment, it's also the people that will view it when we put it to live permanently on YouTube. And what we've seen with some of the initial campaigns that we've done is there may be a couple of dozen people that are watching at the time of the broadcast, but by the next morning, you'll see that increase to over 100 and can grow from there based on the content. As a matter of fact, I think Carrie is going to give us an example of one that we just recently did with Dan the Carpet Man, or Mattress Man, excuse me.
Only USA made foam. We're one of the only companies that brag that, and I'm proud of that. We love that company for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, hands down. Do you want to try wandering to the...
So that's just a brief snippet, but to give you an idea while we have this up on the screen, you can see we have Dan the Mattress Man's logo up in the right-hand corner. It allows you to be able to put script below where both of the parties are speaking. That's Jim Biggins from the Moose Morning Show. We have very skilled announcers who can work with you to do a great job of making you look great. And there's also a scroll that will run across the bottom that can contain additional information. And there's the opportunity for the people that are watching to be able to submit questions that can be read and answered while you're doing the broadcast. The cost of this is $500, so it's a pretty reasonable way to reach out and make your Facebook or social media campaign much more exciting. Next slide, please. This will give you an idea of some of the costs involved. This is for targeted ad display, as Daryl was talking about. Campaign costs can vary a little bit depending on exactly what you're looking for, but for the geofencing and search retargeting and contextual targeting that Daryl was talking about, it's about $1,200 for 100,000 impressions, which is a very good economical cost. The stars ad at the bottom is just to give you an idea of what an ad can look like. This was one that we did for Stars, the local bus service in Saginaw, where they offered free bus rides on election day in March. So give you an idea of what that looks like and everything, and we would take care of all the artwork, production, and everything that goes along with that. Next slide, please. Also, while we're talking about pricing, to give you an idea of the cost of our radio stations. This is showing a campaign for a non-preemptible campaign to run 28 commercials, broadcast commercials, 30-second broadcast commercials on one of our stations, and then additional 50 streaming commercials that people can hear online. And the costs are indicated there below. One note is that with WSGW, it's AM and FM, so you're actually receiving 2 radio stations for that investment, and you'd receive double the number of commercials since they're running on the 2 different stations. Next, please. And the other thing that we have to offer you today is the opportunity to have an interview with Michael Percha. Michael is one of our news people at WSGW, AM and FM, and would encourage you to write down his email address. He will be reaching out to everybody we have on the calls, but just in case there's any mix-up or anything, that you're in a position to reach out to Michael. What Michael will do is ask you a series of questions, and then we'll utilize those interviews as we move closer to Election Day to be able to inform our audience of all the candidates that are out there and running. And with that in mind, I guess just a brief summary. Please make sure voters know who you are prior to their filling out that absentee ballot. So if anything, boy, there's an urgency to get this figured out quickly, so not too many folks are turning in those ballots before they hear and see your message. Spend your time and your money where the voters are. That meaning be as targeted as what you possibly can. And again, we were able to show you with digital and social vehicles where that can be extremely efficient. Reserve your Social Stream Live date today with us. It's a great way to be able to reach voters you've already identified, potential voters that we're able to reach for you as well, and have it done in a great professional forum. Really a great chance to talk into more detail about issues and where you're coming from, so the voter really understands who you are and why they should vote for you. And good luck, and thank you for being a part of the political process. It's a sincere thank you for taking your time, not only to be here today, but to represent your communities, to make sure that this democracy that we're a part of really works. And boy, it's a lot of hard work, and it's not always as appreciated, I'm sure, as you'd like. So I just want to say thank you for choosing to be involved. And with that, we can open it up to any questions that anyone may have. Well,
Do we have any questions for Mark?
yeah,
How do you want to ask the question? I mean, do you want to raise your hands or?
Go ahead.
well, you're doing a good job right now. What's your question?
So you can buy parts of this and not all of it at once? Is that?
Sure. Oh, no, absolutely. Everything is available, I guess, based on what you feel is going to work most effectively. The only thing I'd want to qualify is, let's say you wanted to run one radio commercial and one digital commercial. There's a point that you just won't get a good return on it because you don't have enough frequency. But as far as being able to package it and customize it specifically to you, you would be the person, or your folks would be the folks choosing which of the digital, strategies to implement. You'd work through one of our account executives that could advise you based on what you're trying to accomplish, what would be the most effective.
So you say 100,000 impressions.
Yes.
Would some of those impressions be repeats to the same person?
Yes, that's a gross number of impressions. So again, that could be 20,000 impressions that the average person saw 5 times, by example. So that would equal the 100,000 impressions. And again, depending on the tactics you're using, that can either be a higher frequency and a fewer number of people, or more people and a lesser frequency.
Okay, well, I got a tough one here for you.
Okay.
I'm a Democrat. What shows do you have that I would want to run on?
From a radio standpoint?
Yes.
Well, I guess, again, part of that depends on your strategy. If you're only looking to reach Democratic folks, boy, we have stations there that are more likely to be Democratic. One of those stations would be KISS, our urban station. Another might be Mix 106, where we reach a younger soccer mom type of person. Then on the opposite side, you have stations like WSGW, where we're running programming like Rush Limbaugh, that obviously is much more Republican. But I can also tell you that some politicians take the strategy of trying to bring people over and not just, if you will, sing to the choir. And, Rush Limbaugh is a great example. A good portion of the audience that listens to Rush don't agree with them. They just love to listen and get angry. So again, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, we can target that for you from a radio standpoint.
So, in other words, if you do a radio, it doesn't run, through every show. It runs through the shows you want to pick. Or
again, you can kind of buy it whatever way you would like. However, 3 out of our stations are music stations. So those tend not to be program oriented. Now, on KISS on Sunday afternoon, we run a couple of talk programs that specifically address that. But other than that, all the stations are primarily running music. So then it's targeting the music to the type of voter that they most likely would be. But, Mix 106 is a good example. I doubt that we reach exclusively Democrats or Republicans because it's kind of a middle of the road type of radio station.
Okay, so let's see. I feel like I had one more question here. Oh, well, in the primary, you're trying for a different audience than you are in the general election.
Sure, good point.
So, so I have a primary opponent. So, I would probably want to run something different during leading up to the primary than I would after the primary.
Absolutely, and we customize all that to you, and not only to you, but the race you're in. To your point.
So, do you have production costs that are?
No production costs for the radio or for the digital. We do all of that in-house, and we'll provide it for you at no charge.
So if I decided to go with you, I could change my strategy after the primary and not incur any other costs?
No, exactly. Or let's say you were to start a few weeks out from the election and something big happened and you wanted to change your commercial because, boy, you can change your commercial as often as you'd like. We encourage people not to change it too frequently because you lose the frequency that comes along. But, one of the beauties of radio is, and digital falls in this category as well, is the immediacy. If something happens tonight that has a huge impact on the campaign you're involved in, boy, we'll want to get that commercial changed and address that as quickly as possible for you. And normally we can do that pretty easily within 24 hours, business days.
Okay, well, that's my questions. I don't know if there's anybody else that wants to.
Excellent. Well, appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in.